All right. Welcome back to our third in a series of four panel discussions about curriculum-informed AI here at Imagine Learning. Last session, we discussed, what does AI aligned to high-impact instruction look like? And it was an excellent discussion there with Nari Carter and Ryan De La Garza, and of course, Jason Fournier, who joins us again today. This week, we're going to be discussing what does AI that's aligned to your needs look like? And by your needs, we mean your needs, the person watching this, the teacher, the educator, the admin, the expert in the field of education or educational technology. Because it's not about our needs, it's about their needs. With me today is Jason Fournier, like I said, VP of Product Management, AI Initiatives, Linda Brown, Principal Product Designer, and Rachel Murgatroyd, Senior Software Engineer. Rachel, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role here at Imagine Learning?
Yeah, so I was actually a high school math teacher for about 6 years. And then I kind of did a bit of a boot camp to learn software engineering and then taught myself. And then I joined an education startup as a software engineer, probably coming up for like 6 years ago, actually. Um, and then, joined kind of Imagine Learning as part of that about 6, 8 months ago. Kind of mainly focused on like the front end, so what the user sees, but also kind of having oversight of everything, like what's going on in the back and the front, and also kind of have quite a big interest in just I suppose like meeting users' expectations from like a product kind of point of view as well.
Excellent. Linda, tell us more about yourself and your role here at Imagine Learning.
Sure. So my role is principal product design, and I have kind of an unusual background in that I started out with kind of a background in music, fine arts, and also computer science and electrical engineering. And early in my career, I ended up teaching college for 6 years at several community colleges in Southern California, and was also kind of sidelong very heavily into the like sound for film and media production for film industry down in Southern California. So it was very interesting kind of jumping in from that angle. And all these years later, it's really fascinating to find a role in education still, but on the kind of technology side of things. So I'm able to kind of bring that education plus art and technology into the mix. And there are so many through lines that I have found between back early in this software days of, when computer music started to emerge, and we were manipulating audio through a series of algorithms. And all these years later, AI has a lot of connecting points between you just swap a sound signal for data, and the concepts really hold up. And so it has just kind of immersed me in the excitement and potential of what AI can do, and then being able to funnel that into things that actually help kids and students learn just is kind of the ultimate joy of my job. So that's a bit about me.
So what you're saying is you kind of sometimes think about AI,
Just a little.
just a little bit. And because there's no exact order to these, and someone might start with this episode versus the others, Jason, for a
Sure.
third time, if you do us the honors of telling us who you are and what your role here is.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. My name is Jason Fournier. I'm VP of Product Management for our AI initiatives and data here at Imagine Learning. And my role is mostly focused on how do we use AI in service of our products to meet the needs of our customers, learners, and teachers and administrators. And we want to do that in a way that's safe, that's responsible, that takes into account the realities of the classroom and really is effective and useful, and not gratuitous, not kind of for no reason, just for AI's sake, but really intended to help move forward the goals of learners and teachers in the class. So I'm really excited to be here again. And Sean, thanks for continuing to host these for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the use of the word gratuitous there. I'm going to borrow that phrase, gratuitous use of AI going forward. Okay, so let's get into it here. First question, I'll hand this off to you, Rachel, and I'm telling you that now, so you have a little bit of time to think about it while I read it out here. I think your experience as a former classroom teacher and engineer, you'll have a lot of thoughts on this. What are some of the real world needs customers have shared, or are maybe just sort of common educator concerns, in the air that you sort of feel and think about on a daily basis? And how can the tools and features that we're building as part of our curriculum informed AI initiative can help with those?
So yeah, as like both a former classroom teacher and an engineer, I'd say I approach kind of building AI tools with quite a lot of, I'd say, empathy and like kind of knowing what like the realities of teaching really are. And I think this is going to sound really strange, but I think teachers don't just need like more tech. Um, what I mean by that is I remember when I was teaching, it kind of felt like every week we were being asked to kind of implement a new piece of technology. We had a new username, a new password, and what kind of came with that was like a 2-hour training session after school when you're already lacking time, like all those kinds of things. And teachers used to complain about it to each other. And so I think then when I mean like teachers don't need more tech, they don't need more tech because sometimes those things wouldn't feel very helpful. They feel like they would almost be like a hindrance. And so I think we really need to make sure that anything that we're building kind of reduces friction, saves time where time can be saved. So with planning and sourcing materials and kind of amplifying what teachers already do really well. And so I think the kind of key question to ask ourselves when we're building is this tool actually going to make a teacher's day easier? And I think that's the kind of key question that needs to drive every single kind of design and engineering decision. And so, for example, when we have got kind of a lesson plan creator, it's not just that we should be just creating a lesson plan creator and just like, that's it and go. It needs to understand, curriculum standards. That's a really key point for a lot of teachers, because that is a key thing that they are being told that they need to meet. It needs to adapt to students' needs. Again, a really massive thing that teachers spend quite a lot of time on, and often there's conflict between the adaptations they make, but like the program that they're following and things like that. So that's a really big thing that anything that we make needs to be able to do. I think any materials that then like come with that again need to be like straight away available without any kind of extra input from teachers, like actually usernames and logins and all that kind of stuff. And I think also what's really important, and this is kind of coming maybe from what I experienced when I was teaching, but also I think from what other teachers have said, is that anything that we make needs to kind of roll with the like natural planning rhythm of a school day or a school week. So, I mean, every teacher is different, their classes are all different, schools have different requirements. And so like where your planning journey might start might be completely different from one teacher to the next. And it's not a kind of one size fits all approach. So some teachers might kind of want to start from like a resource, and some teachers might want to start from a structured lesson plan. Some might want to start from a worksheet that gets created, and some might want to start from a bunch of standards that their school has said to them, these standards need to be met within the next however long. So we need to make something that can like start a journey from any of those points, and not just this is how it's got to be, because that's going to really hinder a lot of teachers, because that's not the flow that they're used to. So yeah, I think that's really important. I think like I said, like we used to have to do loads of training sessions for this kind of stuff. So I think the fact that the UI and the UX is really intuitive is massively important, because we all know teachers have no time as it is. We don't want to, make them use up even more of their time. And I think like finally, it's not just about like the functionality, but it's the trust. I think there's sometimes a feeling when we were teaching, I remember that was the kind of time when like there was a conversation about which jobs are like AI going to replace. And I think as teachers, we were like, we're good because like we know what like we know what our students need, and like AI will never know that. And like we're experts in our fields, and AI kind of can't do that for us. And I think that is so true. And I think we need to kind of build trust with teachers that we know that's true, and that we're building a tool that's going to work with teachers and that isn't going to, replace their judgment. And I think that's really important when we're building that we show that.
So like Linda, you barely think about this at all.
Yeah, barely. No,
Barely.
I live and breathe it, just like
Yeah.
Rachel. Yes.
I think I've said something on every session at least one time of like, people are going to think we rehearsed this or scripted it or somehow, sort of preceded the discussion, but we really have not. And the way you were speaking, Rachel, about what was the phrase you used? That was like roll with the natural, I think you said rhythm or pace of teaching. And you made a comment about, making teachers' lives easier. And that's sort of the guiding, the North Star of what you're working on. In our previous session, Ryan De La Garza had this idea of there just needs to be like a feel good aspect to it of when I'm using, as a teacher, as an educator, as an admin, when I'm using these tools, these features, I just need to feel good. I need to feel good about them, and it needs to leave me feeling good about the results that I'm getting from them. So again, you think we've rehearsed it, but I love that we have this through line where we're all kind of saying the same thing in a little bit of a different way. Linda, Rachel said something that stuck with me, which was, the whole thing of teachers don't necessarily need more tech, and
Yes.
more tech and more tech and more tech can become a real hindrance of,
Yes.
well, every product has a slightly different user experience, a slightly different login, password, this, that, and the other. For you, as a product designer who's working, daily with, generative AI tools and thinking about how our AI tools and features will manifest in the lives of teachers. How do you take that and think about that and try to balance? Well, we are technically giving them more tech,
Right.
but the point of it is almost to be somewhat invisible,
Yes.
that it just becomes, ingrained in the daily life. So how does that manifest for you on a daily basis?
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think it's almost like creating a building that is really well designed, because each piece fits together and creates a really amazing experience as we think so deeply around how to create elegant solutions that are a nice baton pass between what Rachel had mentioned, when we're actually coding it and building the foundational structure of the system and the product. There's all these layers. Like, the foundation is good because we've put so much time and energy into, working with our academic designers, having incredible engineers like Rachel who have that empathy kind of baked into how we're designing and coding. And then you kind of roll that forward into the kind of design aesthetic layer. And that's where, I think it's almost implied that the way that we can think of AI, I know that there's a lot of fear around AI, and sometimes that can be almost a mental barrier to get over, and really embracing what is the potential. And so I think one theme that we are really embracing is the fact that this is kind of a power up that we get as designers and individual contributors to say, I have ideas, I am empathizing with our customers, our users, and now I have an enhanced ability to create in a way that I never could before. And that is radically different from where we've been as ever before in technology. And so the way that I would say that that practically plays out, when we kind of zoom back and really think about student engagement, is a great kind of touch point, because we have been so limited to team sizes and our own artistic capabilities in the past. And now the swath of types of media and interactivity that we can now create thanks to the ability to work with AI tools is just extraordinarily like exponentially larger. And the benefit to students in particular is that we see them, going into the classroom and having a certain level of design and experience. And then they go out into their real world in their day to day, and that level of design and user experience is far different. When we think of video games, movies, TV shows that they're constantly exposed to, they know the difference, and our kids are real smart. So, being able to really lean in and say, I am now going to meet that and meet them where they're at. AI enables us to do that, and it is so exciting, and also really listen to what is it that they respond to at different age groups. It's very different. And so as an individual contributor or even a small team of designers, we can now deliver on what kids are actually saying that they want in a way that we never could before. And that is very exciting.
Outstanding. So I'm going to ask you a question, Linda, that's not on our list of things to talk about, but I'm the moderator, so I can do this. You got on a topic there of basically student engagement and, what do the students actually want and what is already out there in the world in terms of culture, media,
Right.
tools and things like that. How do you go about sort of, we'll just say, keeping your finger on the pulse of kids are using ChatGPT, right? We know it's out there. Teachers using ChatGPT, and everyone's using it in some way, shape, or form. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with those tools, how they're being used, outside of a classroom system or outside of a curriculum plan or a lesson plan, and then how do you use that to inform what we're doing with
Totally.
what we've got as far as curriculum informed AI? I am personally curious about it. Hopefully others are as well. But if you could answer that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Awesome. I love this question. It helps that I'm a mom, and so I have a daily dose of, kind of understanding what is trending with kids. But also, we as an organization, we do really listen to what our customers are saying, and that does extend to what's trending with kids. And I think especially given the impact of AI and how we are so embracing it as an organization, that is part of kind of our daily habit, of really understanding what are the tools that are emerging, what are trending in school districts, and how do we keep taking advantage of that. I know it's no secret that, month to month, new features emerge that are leaps and bounds ahead of where they were, even just 6 months ago. And so it's kind of a moving a bunch of balls forward at the same time, because there's tools that students and teachers are using that are constantly evolving, that we have our eye on and are constantly doing research with. And I very involved in my kids' school. And so, it's really nice to kind of get that, be able to understand what's going on there. But I would say the other piece of this that is just always on our minds is, what are the new tools that are coming out? I mean, just this week, we've had so many new releases on design related products that the minute something comes out, we just jump right in and start digging into, okay, great, this new feature enables us to do these new things. And so immediately jumping into experimentation and trying it, not just kind of sitting back and observing, but really getting our hands in the mix and saying, okay, where are its edges and how far can we push this tool? So,
I love that answer, Linda. Sean, I just want to add it. Kind of, Linda talked about some of the ways that she gains that insight, both from her own lived experience and then talking to students. We recently just completed a program where we had some students who were in a design internship go out and do some design research with their peers and ask them questions about using AI, and then come back and present to us what they found. And so I share that only to say, like, we try to have a very multifaceted approach to how we get feedback, both from teachers, from districts, from administrators, but also from students. And that was really eye opening for me. I mean, they talked about how they were using some of these tools in their day to day life. Aspects of companionship, sometimes using the tools in a way that is like a digital friend that can be there when a real friend might not be. How they're using it in class, and they told stories of students using it in really compelling and productive ways, students using it in maybe what we would think of as non-productive ways, cheating. One story involved a student who took a photo of a quiz, went to the restroom, asked ChatGPT for all the answers, wrote them on her hand, and then went back to class and filled them in. Um, and then they talked a lot about just their own fears and kind of optimism about the technology. The idea that it was making so many tasks easier for them, but they were starting to have questions about whether it was removing their opportunities to be creative or what the impact might be when they get into the workforce. And so I think again I found those anecdotes coming directly from students as they talk to their peers to be really valuable and helpful as I think about from a product leadership perspective, where should we invest and what types of products should we build and how do we do them in a way that really meets the goals of the classroom, the goals of the learner, and the goals of the teacher.
I appreciate in that story you gave me there, that anecdote you gave me there, Jason, that at the end of the day, the student still had to write it on her hand. So, as we talk about, can AI replace us? Can AI replace jobs? I mean, if we're still having to go the most analog route of writing stuff on our hands after using it, maybe we're not there yet. Obviously, we don't go cheating or anything like that. But I thought it was interesting that at the end of it, it was like, well, I still got to write it on my hand, and hopefully it doesn't sweat too much on my way back to the classroom. You said something there about, I mean, aligning with goals and district goals and teacher goals. And again, you guys are on fire with this stuff, because literally the next question I have here in front of me is, how does AI align to a district's instructional goals or a teacher's classroom needs? I want to amend it a little bit there and say, or a teacher's classroom needs or a student's classroom needs, because I feel like our discussion in the last several minutes here has really centered around student use of the product, or of the tools and features. And Rachel, I'll come back to you on this again, sort of leading on your background as a teacher. How do you think about a teacher's needs in the classroom, a student's needs in the classroom, and an overall sort of district's instructional goals, as you're working on these tools?
I suppose, I'd say feedback here is key. If I'm, good to talk about that. So, I mean, I'd say I'm also very wary that I was a teacher for 6 years, but that was nearly 6 years ago as well, and things have changed. And that was in the UK. So, I mean, everything is different. So I think really kind of teachers are our most valuable collaborators. And I think teacher feedback isn't just shouldn't just create kind of a list of features for us to make, but it should be critical in terms of the processes that we from both the design, a product, a development point of view. And I think looking for patterns in what's working and what's missing is really important. And one of the, I think, conflicts that's come up sometimes is, I might have mentioned this previously, but when teachers are kind of trying to adapt for their students' needs, often it means that the pedagogical approach that is aligned with the program that their school follows, there kind of might be a mismatch there, and that's often quite a big problem, because a lot of these programs do have a really clear pedagogical approach. The teacher comes in and wants a slightly different lesson plan on something, and that plan no longer kind of aligns with that pedagogical approach. So I think then that's something for us to go away and in the tool that we're making, what's really nice is that we've got kind of full control over the system prompts that we use. So the kind of what we're telling, how we're telling the AI to respond to things. And also we've given it a ton of examples as to how we'd like it to respond. So we've said, if the teacher has asked for, this is what teachers asked for, this is how we want you to respond. And we've kind of gone through with teachers and before and said, is this what you'd expect? But, if teachers are then coming to us and saying, this is not kind of meeting the pedagogical approach that my school requires, that my district requires, then that's for us to go away. But what's really nice is that we can tweak those system prompts and we can add or change those examples, go back to those teachers and back to the schools and say to them, if a teacher asked for this and this was the response, is this what you're looking for? And if not, we can keep tweaking it so that AI is kind of fully trained on those things. And I think that's what's really important, is to just keep getting that continuous feedback from schools and from districts to say to kind of get that up to date need of like what the classroom is needing.
Absolutely. Linda, staying on the topic of goals, you know, you use a lot of, or you spend a lot of time dealing with, interacting with, working on generative AI tools, both sort of existing outside of Imagine Learning, but especially within our curriculum-informed AI sort of set of tools and features. How do you make sure that your use, our internal use of those kinds of tools, aligns with what would be a curriculum or a district level goal for our customers?
Yeah. I think it's still, to kind of go back to that architecture analogy. It isn't just one role or me working on one slice of it. It's thinking of a system, the whole system, and I think there's a bunch of different factors that all of us are constantly weighing in the mix as we deliver on kind of a full stack solution that does actually meet the needs of teachers and students. And so AI, as exciting as it is, it also is very technical. And so there's this inevitable kind of constant plate spinning of what are the technical constraints and opportunities, and being able for all of us at every layer to kind of weigh in on our expertise. But I think particularly this is an interesting intersection that's starting to happen with design and engineering, because we are consulting with our academic design experts. We're getting, as Rachel mentioned, we're getting feedback from our customers. We have that human and pedagogical element that is so heavily feeding into the designs that we do. But it's also this kind of new landscape wherein design and engineering have to be more integrated now more than ever, because understanding how to deliver on a user-facing feature that will have that presentation layer that is engaging inevitably has to kind of understand how the data structures work, and the deep research that Rachel and her team are doing in order to actually make a very innovative, user-friendly solution. And I think that is a kind of new territory that we're working with. I think that's where it's our knowledge base and our hunger for wanting to be curious is now kind of raising to new heights than ever before. Because in the past, before these tools, we could kind of stay in our own swim lane and say, okay, I'm going to design a UI and hand it over the fence to an engineering team. And we can't do that anymore. The kind of game has changed. And so now we get to speak a much more fluid language between teams as we take in all these inputs from how do we innovate and make this really powerful and useful.
Outstanding. Jason, this next question is we'll come to you. We'll start with you on this one. But sort of speaking of the way Linda was mentioning, we can't sort of just do a thing, hand it over the fence to another team and say, here's some instructions, good luck, let us know if you have any questions. Similarly, how do we at Imagine Learning, how does the team here at Imagine Learning partner with districts to implement AI effectively and implement the kinds of tools and things that we're building?
Yeah, I think the one thing I tell people a lot is there are problems that are not new problems. Like there are things about AI that are not any different than the way we've always had to work. I think Rachel touched on earlier the kind of deployment and implementation of products when she was a teacher, and it requires a couple of hours of training, and it's a new thing you need to integrate. We try to be smart and intentional and thoughtful about how to integrate these tools in ways that feel fluid and natural and don't require a lot of extra overhead from teachers. And I think having experts like Linda and Rachel think deeply about the customer experience, the user experience, the design. One way we implement is just by being thoughtful up front as we build, so that the experiences are intuitive and understandable and fit and are aligned to expectations. And it's not a labor to figure out how to use them. It's very clear and transparent how to use them to get good effects. So that's one part of it. But then, as an organization, we bring a lot of expertise and staff to bear in order to partner with districts and teachers. And that can be everything from your account execs who are there to help you and provide training, provide documentation. It's our trainers and our PL and PD staff who can come in and help deliver professional development, not just about our tools, but how do you think about AI literacy and AI fluency in the classroom? And how do you evaluate these tools and evaluate the outputs of them? Um, and then we've got our support teams and our customer success managers and all the other folks that our customers know so well who are there to help and help to implement. So, I think that's one side of it, Sean. And then the other piece that I would just offer is all of this technology, a lot of the AI pieces are it's Gen AI that's new in the last kind of 2.5 years. And I think there's a lot of questions we get from districts around how do I know what you're doing with my data? Or how do I know that you're not using my data to go train someone else's model or you're giving it to third parties that I wouldn't approve of? Um, and we try to be I mean, actually, I'll restate that. We don't try. We are very transparent with our customers about what we do and how we do it. And that's inclusive of things like GDPR in the markets where it's appropriate, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, or FERPA, or other regulations. It's how we handle our DPAs, our data privacy agreements, and we provide transparency around third-party data processors we work with. So there's also the kind of logistical and practical part of buying and using these tools, where we engage with our customers as partners. We're constantly looking at the RFPs that customers are putting out and understanding how the questions they have are evolving and making sure that we can answer those. And we're also trying to be a thought leader in the industry in terms of setting out how we think the responsible deployment of this technology should look and what it means to do that in market in a visible and transparent way. So, multifaceted answer, but I think it's because these are big, hard, meaty questions to answer, and we're trying to make sure that we're answering them from all of the relevant directions.
Absolutely. Rachel, one last question for you here, kind of off the back of what Jason was just saying. So we have, very real things that we have to align to in terms of regulations and privacy concerns, like GDPR and things similar. But on the other side, you mentioned the word empathy, or building our product, leading with empathy when building these tools and features. And so thinking about having to align to these very real world sort of pieces of legislation and regulations, how do you go about thinking about the safety that we build into these tools and features for teachers, in terms of accuracy of information or hallucinations in the generated results? Speak on that a little bit.
Yes, I mean, so I think the really important thing to remember is that the safety stuff starts with like recognizing that AI isn't perfect. And I think we all know that. But I think sometimes it can seem very like trustworthy straight away. I think in education, even like small errors can have like very big impacts. And so I think that's really important. And so I think when we're building, treating like accuracy, reliability, aligning with curriculum are just completely like non-negotiables. And so we kind of design guardrails with like both prompt architecture and user experience to make sure that happens. So like I mentioned earlier, what's really nice is that we have full control over kind of like everything that's kind of going on under the surface. So we kind of ensure that like all our outputs are grounded on like verified proprietary content sources. And we have full control over how tightly the AI sticks to that source material, and how much we want it to use that source material. So that's great for us because that gives us that kind of full control, and we know that that material is trustworthy. And I think with that, we have the opportunity to kind of build in transparency. So from a user experience point of view, now that we've got that content that we know that our outputs are grounded on, if we have created a lesson plan, we can show that content, and we can, it's like indicative to the user, like this lesson plan has been created based on this content. It hasn't just made it up. This is where it's come from. Or if we create a worksheet, we can say these questions are like strictly aligned to these standards. It hasn't just come up with them out of nowhere. That's where it's come up with them from. So I think having that transparency is really important. I think kind of building with the assumption that everything that the AI produces is editable and reviewable is really important. So kind of enforcing to teachers that we don't want them to like blindly trust the tool and just like get something produced and just give it to their class. Like I've said, like they're the expert. This is not the final authority. It's creating something for them to review and adapt using their knowledge. And so I think that's a really important point to enforce, because I do think sometimes like AI can just, because it's quite conversational, it can come across as like all knowing, and it's really not. And it's here to assist and save time. So yeah, I think that's really important. And I think, finally, from an engineering point of view, obviously we test for edge cases and test for if a teacher has used kind of ambiguous phrasing or like informal queries and stuff like that, like how is it going to react? And we can, again, because we have full control, we can just tighten it up with the system prompts and the examples and everything like that to make sure that there aren't any hallucinations and biases. But yeah, those are the kinds
Well,
of things.
Rachel, like one question I would ask you is, you were a teacher, so were you always perfect in the classroom? Like
No, sorry, I'm not implying.
no, and I'm not saying you are, but I think like one way to think about this is like teachers have made mistakes, and we've always tried to have grace in the face of that. And publishers have always made mistakes. I mean, that's why we have errata processes and core agenda processes. And so I try to think about it from that perspective too, is none of us are infallible. I make mistakes when I make product requirement documents and JIRA stories. And it's the same level of scrutiny that we would always provide and evaluation. And we just need to make sure that we don't, to your point, sometimes the AI can seem overconfident in the answers that it gives. And we just need to remember that there's always been a little bit of room for error. And we've always taken that into account and had processes in place for that. I guess that's another variation on my theme of like, some of these are not new problems. They're problems we've always had to deal with. And we just need to kind of not think of AI as a calculator that's always going to punch out the same answer when given a certain set of inputs. And instead, think about it a little bit like we would think about working with each other. There's always a chance for mistakes. You've got to double check. But when you use the tools the right way, just like when we collaborate effectively as teams, we get better results that way than we would have otherwise.
That's such a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
Jason, it kind of calls to mind the way we sort of ended our discussion last time, where you made a comment about, not every moment is an AI moment, where, an AI moment would be, hey, help me generate a lesson plan based on these inputs. Great, thank you. But now a non-AI moment is me as the human being, flesh and blood teacher. I need to go through and adjust and customize and edit and shape this a little bit to the exact needs of my students in the room with me. And that there's always going to be a need for that.
Yep.
Like we can trust that what went into this tool was accurate and verifiable and good. And we can trust that what comes out of it will reflect that. But there's still going to be a need for a little bit of a interpretation or translation, if you will, between the results and actually serving the students.
Totally. It's the point that Rachel made earlier, that the teacher knows her classroom the best. And what we're trying to do is provide tools that can help make certain parts of her planning and her prep and her kind of classroom management more efficient, so that she can spend time with her students doing the creative work, the inspiring work, the really productive work of helping students contextualize education and put and kind of build things into their worldview. So yeah, totally agree with that, Sean. Right on.
So if you can believe it, that brings us to the end of our discussion today. Linda, Rachel, Jason, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for the insights into the work that you do and the perspectives that you have. But also, it feels like we all kind of have a general, there's a general like through line here, whether we intended it or not. And we'll just go ahead and say we did. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the talk today. Thank you so much for each of your time. And with that, we'll bring this to a close, and then we'll be back with another episode in about 2 weeks.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Thank you.